I should have called a cab after all, but Ira had just bought a Helentwagon a week ago, and she had not yet had enough of it. Every time she sank into the noble creaking leather of the interior, she felt peace and a little bit of superiority in her soul. Not many women her age could afford such a car, after all. Stories of her Instagram always bristled with fresh pics, and, as aptly noted her friend Stella, the image of Irina with her favorite Mercedes met much more often than her beloved husband. That it is. Ira fidgeted with pleasure on the seat, adjusted the mirror, removing at the same time an eyelash out of her eye, buckled up, reached for the remote from the barrier, and started driving. As planned as of this morning, Ira finally got her beloved car insured. Then she went to sunbathe. After the tanning salon, there was not much to do. She could have wandered around the mall. I could get in touch with Stella or Galia and sit in a cafe. Or both. However, after a little deliberation, Irina decided to visit a travel agency and talk about the Christmas vacations. Yes, it's still only August, but it's better to plan everything in advance. It would still take time to talk Dima into it. Ira honked her horn to a hesitant Solaris, catching a glimpse in the mirror as it darted aside when she was already at the next intersection. On the first day, the power of the car was frightening, but now it was a real pleasure. The phone beeped and the girl reached for her purse. At the same moment, she was jerked to the side, then sharply thrown against the door. She hit something elastic and immediately leaned back on the passenger seat. The recorder snapped off the front window and wiggled on a wire near the stereo. Smoke appeared from somewhere in the cabin. What is this? Am I on fire? A languid thought flashed through. Ira straightened up, pulled aside the inflated, but already falling down curtain, and opened the door. Staggering, she stepped out onto the road and looked at her brand new Jeep. Oh no! What dead man had done this to her? Quickly wheezing, she mechanically forged a few splinters out of the styling and walked around to the front of the car. Facing her right side was a shabby Cherokee. Something was pouring out of it directly onto the pavement, and the Mercedes, her little Mercedes a half hour ago, all glossy and shiny. The whole right side was pressed inside, and even the roof had a big hump on it. What were you looking at, pussycat? A shrill cry made Ira turn around. The scrawny, drool-splattered little man shouted something, but his words began to fade and were almost hushed when another character appeared on the scene. A fat-looking guy climbed out of the Cherokee. Ira watched apathetically as he approached, took her by the shoulders, and shook her sharply. Then again, "Don't yell, Andrew. She's in shock." The annoying sounds faded at once, and the guy asked loudly, "Are there any injuries? Is everyone alive?" "I think so." Ira was slowly coming back to reality. "There's something burning in my car. It's the squib in my airbag that blew, and that's what's making the smoke." "All right. The main thing is everyone's alive, and we'll deal with the iron." "The iron," shouted Ira, and she repeated, completely devastated. "With the iron. Do you know how much that iron is worth?" "Why are you crying so much?" "The insurance will pay, and you can buy a new one." The guy interrupted again, "Or you'll earn a new one." "It's scary." At half a word, Ira's tongue fell off. She didn't even realize that she had just been called a whore. Her legs began to buckle, she staggered, and she clung to the shoulder of the stronger one to keep from collapsing. It was as if the ground had opened up in front of her, and somewhere deep below she saw the bottom of a ravine, perhaps with red-hot lava. Ira suddenly remembered that the insurance was only valid from tomorrow. This was the end. Dima would just kill her. "Hey, young lady, why are you so pale? Do you have insurance?" With the last of her strength, the girl straightened up and tried to give her voice an accusatory tone. "Where were you going? This is a city, not a Dakar rally." "Exactly, it is a city. And in the city, you're supposed to let those on the right. We have everything written down." Skinny Andrew, meanwhile, ripped the recorder from the Mercedes. "Yes, she has a record too," he said, scrolling through the footage. "I can see everything perfectly." "Ahu," his buddy mumbled affirmatively. "So I'll repeat the question. Do you have insurance?" Now the finish line was complete. I had to call someone. Not Dimma. He can't. She told him last week that she was insured. He wouldn't forgive a lie. She put her finger on the sensor and the phone unlocked. At the same moment, the skinny rascal snatched the cell phone from her hands and brazenly started leafing through her contacts. Now we'll find out for ourselves. Should we call the cat? No. Oh, there's Sweetheart. What are you doing? You bastard. Don't you dare. Shut up. The guy poked at the screen, and his buddy grabbed Ira's arm and yanked her aside. Stop it right now. Ira. Dimma's voice came out of the phone without any preamble. If it's any more bullshit like last time, I'll kill you. How many times have I told you not to call me on Tuesdays? Please. Ira whispered through her lips to the guys. Andrew smirked and held out his cell phone. She greedily grabbed it and babbled in a disruptive voice. Sorry, sweetie. I guess I accidentally dialed. Fool. He threw into the tube Dimma and hung up. I think Sunshine was not very happy to hear you, said Andrew with mockery. And he doesn't know how much money he set himself up for, said the other one. What do you want from me? Ira asked tiredly. She was completely broken. The money, girl. Money, repeated the vile Andrew in syllables. The second was calmer. Why do you drive without insurance? Because your daddy must have given you money. He is not my daddy. He is my husband. I just didn't have time. The insurance doesn't start until tomorrow. How much do I owe? The buddies looked at each other. Then the guy named the amount. Do you have it? Not that it was insanely much, but it wasn't that much. It wasn't even half, so it wasn't worth haggling over. And if you take into account the repair of his car. Ira mentally groaned. The boys were talking in a low voice, occasionally casting a glance at her. At last one wagged his finger and said in a friendly manner, Listen, Ira, do not cry. You are alive, you are not even scratched. That is already good. By the way, my name is Jora, and this is Andrew. Ira. Ira mechanically introduced herself. Then the absurdity of it all came to her, and she smiled crookedly. Look, you are going to write me receipts. That you admit your guilt in the accident, undertake to pay, etc., then we'll call a tow truck. And you calm down and come to this address tonight. Can you do that? It's a car service. We'll discuss everything there. Ira didn't even have the strength to answer, so she just nodded doomfully. She didn't want to go anywhere, but she had to. She had hated that word since she was a child. Gotta eat gruel. She had to study better than anyone else. She had to get her teeth fixed on time. She had to take ballet classes, get into college on a scholarship, get married well. And then, when she finally decided that now there is a man who will take care of all her musts, different circumstances arise again. The service. It must be dirty and fuel oil spilled everywhere. Ira pulled on the oldest jeans she could find, though they were too decent for her taste. A light, fitted leather jacket with a slanted zipper covered the brand-name Armani t-shirt. Something simpler was simply not in her closet. Casual Nike slippers on her feet, and she could call a cab. Before leaving, Ira put on her husband's glasses, which covered half of her face. The Toyota Camry stopped somewhere near the industrial bases. The driver pointed to the gate and repeated the address. Yes, thank you. Ira paid the fare and got out. She stood waiting for the Camry to turn around. There was no asphalt here and the cab driver was trying not to dust. Finally, he accelerated and quickly disappeared around the corner. We have to go, the girl said to herself and grabbed the handle. The gate, equipped with a powerful spring, creaked, gave the girl a kick in the ass and Ira stepped inside. Inside was a large courtyard half full of cars. Some of them were wrecked, some disassembled. Some were clearly dead, overgrown with weeds up to the roof. Ira saw her own damaged car on the left side of the fence. The second person involved in the accident was nowhere to be seen. 50 meters away was an unsightly building with several gates. That was clearly the place to go. When a few steps were left to the open box, Jora in dirty overalls appeared from there. Ah, you're here, he said, somehow completely indifferent. Well, come in. Almost in trail, They walked through the repair area and up the rickety stairs to the glass office. The room was clearly a recreation room though, along with a large desk piled high with invoices and bits of wires. Along the walls were several upholstered couches. Their leather upholstery was not new and multicolored. A refrigerator stood in the corner, and on it an antique stereo. Rumbling footsteps were heard from the stairs, and Andrew walked in with a laptop under his arm. "Ah, you have arrived," he said, just like his friend before. He walked over to the table, set the notebook, and opened it. Then he sat down on the swivel chair, rotated several times half a turn in different directions. He drummed his fingers on the armrests. "You know, let's skip the preamble. We have a solution to your problem. Unless, of course, you got the money. You haven't?" Ira shook her head. "She was not offered a seat," Andrew repeated. "We have a decision. Now everything will depend on you. Either you accept it, or we break up and you look for money. This is not the 90s, and we are not beasts. We'll give you a week to find it, or you can get a loan in a pinch. You understand me too. I've been looking for this Jeep for a long time, and I only drove it for a month." He poked at the keys and turned the screen to Ira. "Look at the level of prices, and it is not quite clear how much these cars are alive." Ira took a look. In general, the prices were not too different from what she had been told during the day. "What's your idea?" "Whew, that's a great idea. It'll get your car fixed, too. It's simple. We write that the accident was tomorrow. Then we'll bait your insurance company and they'll wire us the money." "And the police?" Ira asked stupidly. "They have to issue some certificates." "Don't worry about that. I'll take care of it." "Well, if so, I agree." "Wait, that's not all." Andrew grinned wickedly. And Jorah chuckled too. "I should have an interest too. The fault is yours, and all the problems will be solved by us." "That's not fair. You make a step towards us. Convince us to want to help you." "How can I convince you?" Ira shrugged her shoulders, and at that moment she realized what they wanted her to do. She retreated to the door. "No. No, are you crazy? Don't be silly. Nobody's going to force you. You'll do it on your own and voluntarily. Are you an idiot? Do you know who my husband is?" I know. Sunshine. Only you didn't go to him for help. You came to us. And I don't think you're going to ask him anymore. I can only guess, but you've probably already exceeded your limit on screw-ups. There was no cover-up, but what they demanded, it was unthinkable. "I'll find the money," Ira said as firmly as possible, and turned toward the door. "Well, let's go," said Andrew, a little disappointed, and he reminded me, "You have a week." Ira closed the door behind her and went back down to the service. She walked past the empty elevators to the exit, but each step she took slower and slower. When she reached the gate, she knew full well that she would not make that much money in a week. She stopped, stood for a few seconds, and then moved resolutely back. "You're back," noted with pleasure Andrew, and turned to his silent friend and added, "I told you she was not stupid." In response, he clucked his tongue and hypocritically stretched. "And what a pretty one." This silly compliment made Ira smile through the force. She moved closer and sat down on the edge of the table. Andrew pushed off with his legs and easily climbed up on the chair almost right beside her. He put his hand on the woman's denim-clad knee. Smiling carnivorously, he rubbed it lightly, got up, looked at her face, examining it as if it were a thing. He stroked her hair. "You are a well-groomed girl. We will be glad to have you." "You?" Ira made an attempt to jump up, but Andrew suddenly, with a strong movement, sat her back down on the tabletop. "What has he got to do with it?" She pointed at Jorah. "Calm down. After all, you have already decided everything. And Jorah, well, he was at the accident, so let him be compensated now. Relax. We are not maniacs." Saying these words, Andrew continued to stroke her cheek with his knuckles. Then he moved lower and ran his hand from her ear down her neck to her shoulder. Deliberately, he unbuttoned her jacket and ran his hands under it. Ira was silent. It was not clear how to behave. "Jorah, join us." Together, they easily freed her from the jacket. They pulled the t-shirt over her head. At the same time, Ira raised her arms. Jorah went around, shrugged his shoulders. He came close, lifted Ira's head by the chin with his hand, leaned down and kissed her on the lips. He did it assertively, even aggressively, and Ira, who had decided to limit herself to a passive behavior, did not understand why, responded. He kissed her not as a lover, seeking to make her feel good, but rather as an explorer testing reaction and behavior. And when he got tired of it, he just pulled away and indifferently, without any passion, which he had just carefully demonstrated, looked at the girl. Ira's hair was already a little disheveled and her lips were red, but she still looked quite decent. Andrew stood behind her and put his hands on her shoulders. Ira felt that he felt good to touch her, but there was something else. It was like the joy of a child who had been given a puppy and didn't know what to do with it first. Stroke it, kiss it, or start training it. Or maybe put on a collar and take him for a walk. 2 hours ago, picking up her outfit at home, Ira could not have imagined that she would soon get rid of him this way. They got down to business. They wanted to own her at the same time, and they succeeded. With horror, Ira found that she liked it. Even when she noticed a flashing surveillance camera on the ceiling, she did not make a scandal and enjoyed the full company of these guys. Half an hour later, a shabby Volkswagen with an Uber logo pulled up to the gate of a car dealership on the outskirts, and a slightly disheveled girl in fancy jeans and a skinny guy came out of the gate. He opened the door and handed her his purse. She smiled at him tiredly and lightly touched his cheek with her lips. The guy closed the door, and the passenger waved a long time through the transparent glass until the cab disappeared around the corner.